Today we head south of the border to Rochester, New York, to engage with Jon Sheldon, prior Marine with a host of impressive experiences, and now a life coach and founder of Belleauwood Coaching. Hi, and a hearty welcome to everyone joining us on this snowstormed Canadian evening. Before getting to the our esteemed guests, here's a brief introduction to our organization, followed by our disclaimer. Uh, Voice of Men 360 was founded in 2020 and is based in London, Ontario, Canada. Primarily, we advocate for and support men and boys, though we do reach out to other demographics as best we can. We are affiliated with International Men's Day, who operates in a similar capacity in more than 95 countries and has been doing so for more than 25 years now. Hello, my name is Dipchand Ramcharitar. I'm the Director of Outreach and Development, and at the controls is our hardworking President, Sivam Velautam. Now, here's our disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith towards peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not necessarily represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. Now on with the show, and a hearty and warm welcome to Jon Sheldon. A big welcome to you, Jon. Please introduce yourself, just a little bio, and then I would follow that up with our first question. Jon.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here, and thanks for having me. My name is Jon Sheldon. I'm the owner and founder of Belleauwood Coaching, which is a primarily a business and personal coaching brand based out of Rochester, New York. A little bit of background on me. I served in the Marine Corps in the early 2000s, deployed twice to Iraq as an infantry squad leader. And then from there, went to college, went into business, finance for the next 14 years. And then a couple of years ago, I started my own coaching and development brand, Belleauwood Coaching, where I serve a vast majority of different people and demographics. And one of my big passions and why I wanted to be on the show today was men's health and men's mental health.
Excellent. So the first question is based on men's mental health and mindset in the moment. And it's fairly long. I'm going to read it out. You say mindset is an operating system, not a buzzword. For men under real pressure, like kids, money, business, expectations, what mindset in the moment actually looks like in terms of mental health? And the second part is, what are you doing in your own head when the anxiety spikes or the fear kicks in?
Yeah, what I mean by mindset in the moment is just kind of how it's worded. Is what do you do when we don't have time to decompress, when you don't have time to figure it all out, and you have to just keep moving, whether it's in a profession, whether it's at home, and what does that look like in terms of mental health? It oftentimes doing what you know to be true and taking a pause a lot of times. I got that advice from a professional years ago that really, really changed the way that I interacted with people, especially when I was starting to get stressed. I would generally, default into pleasing and what I call just putting another rock in the pack, right? I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it.
Right.
And I think I hear that from men a lot, is that word, I'll just take care of it. I'll figure it out. That's like my famous word that I say to friends and family is, I'll just figure it out, until it becomes too much. And what I mean by putting that, and if there's a bunch of men out there listening to this, I know you feel this way sometimes. Every time you say that, what you're doing is you're just taking this rock and you're picking it up and putting it in a backpack and you just keep on walking. Well, at the end of the day, that pack is going to become too heavy. And then what do? And that's where you see men start to break, right? That's why suicide rates among men are so much higher than any other demographic.
Right.
And in the moment, sometimes what you need to do is speak from your heart and your gut and take a second, take a break, and don't be ashamed to say, hey, I need a second here. Sometimes that's all people need, is just a minute. Maybe you need 5, maybe you need a day. I don't know, but just speak from your gut, speak from your truth, and say you need some time to think through this and process it before you just agree to put another rock in your pack, if that makes any sense to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you would say that that would be something you would advise when the anxiety spikes or the fear kicks in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Take a pause. Yeah. Just take it seems so simple, but so many men don't do it. So many boys don't do it, right? They don't stop. They just keep pushing forward. And a lot of times you need that pause.
Yeah, I think I can speak from personal experience because anxiety is a thing that's been bothering me for years. And
Mm.
what happens is it's like a sort of an avalanche, like it sort
Yeah.
of cascades because if you can't stop, everything just sort of piles up one on top of the other. And before you know it, you're running around like a chicken with its head cut off. And, you've lost all sense of logic and, stability. And you just all emotional, all panicky and all that stuff. So you're right. You need to find that moment when things
Mm.
start to spiral to have the ability to stop and say, wait a minute, and check yourself.
Absolutely. And then the other thing I would say too is, if you have a hobby or a habit or something like, like a guys group or something, there's a bunch of amazing statistics on that, of
Yeah.
setting aside the time to engage with other men, to play a video game. I don't know. There's a lot of things that young boys and men do out there. I'm in that generation. I'm 38 myself. I grew up in that space too. And sometimes that's a getaway. And I encourage people to do that. Like, hey, if you got a good crew, or call them up, go grab
Yeah.
a beer, go grab a drink, go play a video game if you want, and chat with them. Right. And sometimes just that evening exercise, that evening activity just does it for you.
Yeah. Some of the little things certainly do help.
Yeah.
Here's another interesting area that concerns combat and trauma and
Mm.
how men carry pressure. Now, here's the question. How did combat leadership in the Marines shape the way you handle stress, fear, and the emotional load now as an entrepreneur? Uh, can you connect a moment from combat to a moment in business where your mental health was really on the line, and how did you manage it? So that's a two-pronged question.
Yeah, I think what combat really taught us, and really the training that we went through in the Marines, was to almost systematize thoughts as you go through them, right, and come up with what we used to call ditties, which are just really memorizable acronyms, essentially, to be able to think through problems in the moment.
Yeah.
I think that is super, super helpful, because the more you can systematize how your brain thinks under pressure, the better
Yeah.
off you'll be. Right. So one of the things that I teach people a lot of times, that I've adapted from my time in the military, now brought into my business, is, something that I call the brief and battle plan. So the brief is pretty simple, and I'll explain it to your audience now. It's 3 simple things. Assess the clarity. Are you clear on the action that you're going through? Do you know the condition that you're in to handle that? And do you accept the cost it's going to take to make that decision? And then, is your first action in alignment with that? And then how do you adapt on the back end? So how do you readjust? How do you think through it and make sure that you're not making repeated errors? And I think that's where it connects to that second part of the question of, how did combat in the moment in business, where my mental health was on the line. There's been so many stressful times in either negotiations with employers or clients, where, like your livelihood. And that's, I think, one of the stressful parts about being a business owner is your livelihood is almost always on the line with, depending on how you run your business. And so I think that's one of those things when you really are able to slow down even for just 90 seconds, go through a process or a structure of decision making. I think that's one way that you can, I think that's when you can manage it, and how I have managed it in business discussions and business deals throughout my career is by structuring the conversation and then taking action. I think a lot of times indecision is what causes a lot of anxiety, right? Instead of just action. I think, and to give my wife a great shout out, she just reminded me of that today, actually, was, hey, you're in this indecision with some things that we have going on. And she's like, you just need to start taking action. She's 100% right. And it's going through that process and sometimes needing that teammate, that reminder to make it through. So a connected moment from combat, there's honestly too many to count. But that systemization of decision making, I think, is incredibly helpful, that I did learn from combat.
Absolutely. And there's another area of life where you certainly need to be grounded. You can't, you have to have all your bases in check, and make sure, you have all the cards falling in the right direction. Otherwise, again, it's because business especially is so challenging and competitive that, you have to produce quality. So that's some good advice there. And now let's move on to battle plans versus performative self-care. You talk about blueprints and battle plans for growth. When it comes to men's health, what's the difference between a real actionable battle plan for your mental and physical well-being and the kind of performative self-care or vision board should guys hide behind but never actually follow through on?
Yeah, it goes back to that. It goes back to what I was just mentioning of projecting what you want to do instead of just taking action on what you want to do. I think there's that perfect, or not that perfect, but there is a clear balance that you need to grab between the two things, where sometimes sitting behind and just saying, I'm going to take care of myself, or I'm going to do that, or doing something that maybe looks great to the public or your family or your friends on the outside, but really isn't what you actually need to do self-care. And that's what I call performative, right? Everybody is different. And this is where I think the danger with social media sometimes comes in, is right. we all look online and we say, oh, this person did this, or this guy wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 in the morning, and I'm just going to do that and everything's going to be fine. That just might not be a part of what I call your blueprint. Right. Some people aren't the 4 a.m., 5:30 people, and that actually damages you. And you trying to do that and failing over and over and over again is performative. That's what I mean by performative. We all have to listen to ourselves at some point in time and do the thing that actually works for us, not just what some guru on social media told you to do. And without taking the time to understand what blueprint and how you actually function as a man, you're never going to figure that out. Some people are night owls. I'm one of those people, right? I don't wake up super late. I don't wake up super early, but I do tend to stay up pretty late. That's because that's just how I naturally am, and I'm okay with that. And for years and years and years, I struggled with that, thinking I wasn't good enough because I wasn't waking up at 4:30 in the morning and hitting the gym. Now I was waking up at 6:30 and hitting the gym. Who cares? And I think we need to trust ourselves. And what I mean by blueprint is every guy out there knows deep down, I truly believe this, deep down, you know how you perform at your best. And a lot of times you're just afraid to say it out loud and show people that this is the way that you perform at your best.
Absolutely. And the thing is, as you mentioned, there should not be a sort of a cookie cutter rule that applies to everybody. We're all different. There are certain things that would generally apply to humans as a whole, but really we have to tailor our needs based on our own experiences, our own fortitude, and everything else that comes with the package. So it's something that we should all keep in mind. And moving on, when a man's inner state doesn't match his outer image, so that's the focus of our next question, which is when a leader's mindset or mental health is out of alignment with the image he's projecting, what are the first symptoms you see? And there's a second part, which is not just in the business, but in his body, his mood, his relationship, and his team?
Yeah, I think what I notice most about men specifically, um, is avoidance. I think a lot of times,
Okay.
avoidance. A lot of men not only avoid, but they'll start getting a lot quiet. They'll get quiet. They won't talk as much. You'll see that in relationships. Um, Mood will be more stoic, but not in a good way. Um, a lot of guys, I think, actually lose weight, don't gain weight, from what I notice. And I think and everybody carries stress differently. So I think it's hard to say like this is such a generalization of how guys handle, pressure and quotas and the quiet breakdown. But I feel like that's what I notice as the main ones is mostly the quiet. I think generally speaking, that avoidance behavior is one of the things that I would say is going to throw up one of those yellow flags, one of those orange flags of, they're protecting something, right? Uh, their inner state isn't matching their outer state, and so I think those are some of the key aspects that I notice,
Right.
is that drawback. It's almost the drawback more than normal. I think guys are pretty self-apparent most of the time, and so when those slight changes, again, as my wife tells me all the time, she knows when something's up, and she's always right. She really is, and because it's paying attention to other people, and I think maybe that's what I'm trying to get at. Is generally speaking, other people notice, and they're going to say something. And when somebody starts talking like, hey, Jason seems a little bit off, check in. I got a great story if you don't mind me asking. I was having drinks with a friend and a group of friends, about a month ago, and one of my friends is a big talker. He talks a lot, just a lot. You know what I mean?
I
And
know.
yeah, right. And I won't mention his name. We'll just call him Z for the record. And I remember asking him, "Hey Z, what's what's going on? You don't seem like yourself today." And he was giving me like one word answers. When the crowd kind of dissipated, he opened up to me a little bit. And then I think one of the best things you can do is knowing when somebody's off, especially for a guy, just check in with them. You guys have
Right.
no idea how much that matters to a man. It's just another dude or another person noticing and paying attention to his needs and saying, "Hey, bro, you okay?" It goes
Yeah.
a long, long way.
Yeah, I know this is a might be considered a controversial take, but one of the things, I guess, that the manosphere, if you want to call it that, um, is sort of recommends is that if you have an issue, because men generally, if you go back in history, up to today, they have this fear of airing their mental or any other weaknesses, so-called weaknesses. So they bottle it up. But one of the things that is recommended is that what you just mentioned. Call up a buddy and lay your heart out on the floor, and that person would more than likely be there for you, and it
Yep.
gives you the opportunity to air out stuff that you should not really be keeping inside. So
Yeah.
that's
And
a very good point.
yeah. And you know what? Honestly, like of just like a point of, again, anybody out there listening, yeah, I struggle with this a lot too. Because all these things that we talk about, which is why one of those reasons I really wanted to be, and one of the things I really like to advocate for is men's mental health, because I've struggled with this so much in my past, even in my
Right,
present. And it's this
right,
conscious state of needing to check in with yourself and being a part. There's nothing more that I find valuable in my life outside of my relationship with my wife
right.
than my relationship with my guy friends. 100%.
Very good. We're moving on now to the strategy problem or health problem in disguise. And the question for that is, can you walk us through a time? I love examples. Can you walk us through a time when a client swore he had a strategy problem, numbers, systems, growth, but what he actually had was a man's health problem, that is burnout, identity, shame, isolation. And that's one part. And the other part is, how did you help him shift his mindset and build a battle plan that actually protected his well being, not just his revenue?
Yeah, I have that example. Yeah. So I have a client, or he's still a client, but he doesn't have this problem anymore. But I had a client, and he was the stereotypical. He just, like the guy I mentioned earlier. He's always putting a rock in his pack, and for him, it was not only business, or family things, but it was ideas. Right? He just constantly had a new idea, and when it wasn't working, he would try and come up with it's a revenue problem, or it's a sales problem, or it's a marketing problem, and all this exaggerated stuff. And one of the things that I felt in the moment was going to really help him was really challenging him on really his purpose. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of men don't take enough time to really understand is, what is their purpose for being? What is their purpose for being a husband, a father, a business owner, a worker, right? It doesn't really matter. Like, what is that purpose for them? And when I really dove into this client, and we started going through his purpose, right? Again, he thought he had a business problem, and we said, well, what is your purpose? And his purpose was all about how he was trying to provide for his family, right? He didn't have enough time. So at the end of the day, for him, challenging him on these business opportunities that he was stressing out about revenue, about marketing, we would challenge him and say, okay, well, how much time did you spend with your kids this week? Because your purpose is to be the best husband you can be. And your child doesn't really care if your revenue goal is 5% off, do they? They'll never know, right? So making sure you dive into what actually is going on with men and connecting them back to their purpose is one of the. And I can say this controversial thing because I am a veteran, and I have struggled with PTSD myself, and so have so many of my friends who I served with. The number one reason that I see for veterans and PTSD is purpose. They lack purpose now. It's not combat trauma. Now, that's not to degrade combat trauma. Trust me, I've seen a lot. But it's to emphasize the fact that when I talk to veterans, it's a purpose problem. They go from having, and I don't think that's just a veteran problem. I think that's a man problem.
Right.
Most men lack purpose, or they're just afraid to say their purpose. And when you bring it back to that, that's a time when, again, clients, and this not just happens to this one client I'm referencing, to many clients, especially men specifically, where they think it's a business problem, they think it's an income problem, they think it's a whatever problem, and it's a purpose problem. So when you're feeling like that, and you're feeling like you're off your strategy, or you're feeling like you're off your piece, connect back to your purpose. And if you don't have one, there is nothing more important that I think you can do as a man than find your purpose.
Exactly. And that's a critical point. And I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's been scientifically proven that the people who live the longest quality life are people who have had a purpose to their life, rather than you just drifting aimlessly. So that's obviously that's something that we should all be mindful of. And now, let's look at the 24-hour reset for men who know they're not okay. For the man listening who knows his mindset and maybe his health is lagging behind his ambition, what's the first in the moment move he should make in the next 24 hours to start a real reset? Not a grand gesture, one concrete action that says, I'm finally taking my mental health seriously.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's get clear and understand exactly what the problem is, and then either speak it out loud to somebody else and get accountability, or write it down. And I actually think the number one thing you can do is find accountability. If you're really struggling with mental health, like we talked about earlier, call a friend, right? Get some accountability behind that action, voice it out, get it out. Just get it out to somebody that you just trust more than anything, right? And if you don't have that person, write it down write it down somewhere and put a name to it, right? Name that thing, get it out, get some accountability behind it. That would be the number one first step that I could tell you to do. Every serious mental health problem that I've ever had, it's because I've kept things in too much in my own head and think that I've got it all. I'll just figure it out. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this, I'll just figure it out. Every time I walk with a guy or talk with a guy about stuff like this, it's the same thing too, right? It's all inside. And sometimes the act of just getting it out and finding that accountability with that next action you need to take. So accountability, define that first action and take the first step. Get some progress going, right?
That's yeah, that's for sure. We need to really address that situation. It's something that we all can do with some good advice on, which you've just gave us. I have a couple more questions for you. The penultimate one is, what's the significance of breaking the stigma around men's mental health in the military, and how can we create a better environment for them to share more openly?
I think the biggest stigma for the men in the military is that I think it's that they are somehow different than any other man. And while they have different challenges, I think I don't see it much differently that they are different. I think that they struggle. I think that they struggle with the same types of things, and the stigma is that they're just disciplined. They'll figure it out. What we fail to realize is that most men, when they leave the military, they just lost all their best friends.
Right.
You're talking about the guys that I served with. I was the closest with I'd ever been to anybody in my entire life, and I was with them through fun times and terrible times and tears and laughter and all the things. And then all of a sudden you leave the military and you go back home and you're isolated. You don't have anybody that understands you anymore. And you have to all of a sudden just assimilate into this culture and this society that just doesn't get your jokes, that doesn't understand your past experiences, and they're a little bit lost. And I think that most people, when they look at a guy in the military, like I heard this stuff all the time, man. It used to drive me crazy. Like, oh, you got it all figured out. And then like I used to hear that right when I got out of the military, because I did have a successful military career. And what they didn't understand was I was so lost. I was walking around just lost all the time, all day, every day. I didn't know where I was. I didn't have my friends. I didn't have my support group, and phone calls helped. But one of the things that saved me really was staying in contact with a couple really close friends and just being really vulnerable and staying active. But the active stuff for me, I think that's the other thing too, is like a lot of military guys will stay really active, and that's just an avoidance behavior. I didn't learn that till 10 years after I'd gotten out, but that's the other thing that I would say too is men are sometimes busy because they're avoiding that. They don't want to think about the things that they're sad about on the inside. And I am going to use the word sad because it's an important thing to say, because a lot of guys are sad on the inside. A lot of vets are sad on the inside.
Yeah, I think so. I have a related question,
Okay.
and I'm just looking for your personal experience, not statistics.
Okay.
What do you think about the incidence of PTSD in veterans?
Could you be more specific?
Well, how often do you see people who have come back from duty get this dreaded PTSD? Is it a regular occurrence, or does it happen in 1 in 10? Or what do you think?
Oof, man, that's a good question. I think there's varying forms of it.
Right.
I think that's true. I wouldn't even pretend to know the statistics because I don't have them off the top of my head. I think it really depends. I actually think it really depends on your role in the military.
Okay.
Just because you served during a time of war doesn't actually mean you ever went to war. But there's also varying types of PTSD. There, somebody else could, I've come to realize this, within the last 5 or 6 years of, that there are different varying types. Some people handle it very differently. I handle it very differently than one of my best friends does.
Mhm.
And I think that's challenging. I say most of my friends to an extent have it, but we were in really intense combat for almost 2 years. So that makes a lot of sense, where I've met other veterans who, didn't necessarily deploy to a combat zone, and maybe they don't have PTSD. So I think the blanket statement is weird. I think it's been kind of stigmatized in a lot of ways because,
Right.
again, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times the PTSD or the struggle, I think PTSD is like this big term that we blanket every veteran that's struggling with mental health with. And I think that's really unfair because, like I'm saying, I don't I can't look at you, and I haven't met a ton of veterans that I've met, in depending on their role, that struggle with PTSD necessarily, but they struggle with mental health. And I think there's this blanket statement that if you were a vet in the last 20 years, like you struggle with, if you're struggling with your mental health, it's because of PTSD. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's necessarily something that we need to ignore either. I think it's the exact opposite, right? But I think this blanket term of PTSD is kind of silly. Some people have it, and some people don't. That doesn't mean they don't still struggle with mental health.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing.
Yeah, it's a sort of an open sort of situation because, as you said, there's no one particular form or degree to PTSD, and it varies from person to person and situation to situation. So I just wanted to get a sort of a idea of what's out there in terms of veterans and PTSD. So we've got one more question for you, but before we get to it, I have some announcements from our organization. First of all, our phone number is 226-289-8784. Our email address is info@voiceofmen360.org. And our website is www.voiceofmen360.org. We try to encourage and we would like as many people as possible to get involved with us in one way or the other. We don't discriminate in any way regarding age, gender, nationality, ethnic groups. All walks of life can participate in our shows, whether you're an individual, a professional, expert in some field, community organizations, associations, corporations, etc., government officials, but all these different areas of life. You're welcome to engage with us in one form or the other. We're available on pretty much all social media outlets. We've got Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. We do have a Facebook page. We ask that you join our Facebook page and engage with all the different articles. We have lots of articles on there, so you can get a gist of what's going on with us and what we represent. And as well, we have a YouTube channel, and we encourage each and every one of you to at least go to it and look at some of the YouTube videos that we have out there. They're very informative, and you can certainly pick up some vital information from that. We do have coming up on January 31st, which is next Saturday, we have a huge event on the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Men and Boys. And it will be live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. It will be on January 31st from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, when we would have a knowledgeable and international cast of panelists engaging in the topic, the role of the media when it comes to violence against men and boys. We would really appreciate if you can join us then. So with Jon here, we have one final question for you. Can you share your contact information for those who are interested in learning more about your work?
Absolutely. So you can feel free to look at my website and contact me on there. It's www.belleauwood.coach. Belleauwood is spelled BELLEAUWOOD.COACH. There's a contact me form on there. Please reach out. And also, you can always DM me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Belleauwood_coaching. I see they just put up my number on the screen too, which you're more than happy to text or reach out to me there. Instagram is Belleauwood, BELLEAUWOOD_coaching. I post a lot, and this is important. I post a lot of free videos on mindset, on just, it's my place where I give back to communities, not just men, on business, and a whole bunch of varying topics. So check me out there. Follow me on either one of those. If you want some free stuff, the Instagram is going to be where you're going to be able to find a lot of free videos and free help guides.
Excellent. Well, this has been such an enlightening and informative session. We are so thankful to you, John. Colossal thanks, rather, to all of you who tuned in today. We really appreciate you doing so. And the same to our special guest, Jon Sheldon, founder of Belleauwood Coaching. Thanks to you for such a meaningful and informative session. And a massive thanks goes out as well to our hardworking president, Sivam Velautam. He's behind the scenes. You can't see him, but he's doing all that's necessary to ensure things go as smoothly as possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, thanks to every one of you for joining us today. We really appreciate the time that you've spent with us. And from all of us here at Voice of Men 360, have yourself a wonderful morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. Cheers from all of us. Bye now.